all have 2 minutes on the final question. The other questions will be a minute and a half. The first question, Ms. Duran, in your current job, what has been your most noteworthy success?
Well, first let me just say this. When I ran for Secretary of State in 2010, there were so many reasons that I decided to run at that time. And I think the most was that for too many years we had heard nothing but bad coming from the Secretary of State's, the previous Secretary of State's office. Under the previous administrations for at least a decade, all we heard were things coming out of that office that were just not good. So I think when we began working, and as I traveled the state and talked to people, I believed that my obligation as Secretary of State to all New Mexicans is to assure that we have integrity in our electoral process. Whether it is from voter registration all the way to the canvassing of the votes, I think that the job of our Secretary of State, and New Mexicans want this all across the state, is to assure everyone that when you go to vote, that your vote counts and counts only once. So my job as Secretary of State, and I think my greatest accomplishment, having been in there now 4 years, is that I have worked tirelessly in all areas of the elections administration. And again, whether it's on assuring that we have accuracy in our voter file, all the way to the canvassing of votes where we have first error-free audit report under my administration, is to assure that we have integrity, fairness, and accuracy in the elections administration.
Thank you. The integrity of our election system in New Mexico is a key aspect of the job of the New Mexico Secretary of State. What is your view on the issue of voter fraud, and what will you do as Secretary of State to monitor or address it?
Thank you for that question. Let me just say this first and foremost. I believe, honestly, and I've helped New Mexicans as I travel, that I believe that if there is one instance of voter fraud, that is one too many. Every time someone who is not eligible to vote votes, that disenfranchises every other vote of every eligible New Mexican. I have seen voter fraud, I have investigated voter fraud, and I have turned over to the district attorney cases of voter fraud. We have seen indictments. We just recently saw again an issue where there was voter fraud alleged again. All of you remember Sunland Park. We turned over 23 names. 6 people were indicted. Many of those cases are still pending. Voter fraud exists. Voter fraud is not the myth. The myth is that voter fraud does not exist and that you will not be affected by any case of voter fraud. I have just recently this year been involved in 3 cases of tied votes being cast in elections, where those votes and those elections were determined by lot. In New Mexico, every time there's a tie vote, that's determined by lot. Every one of us knows someone that we care deeply about and has been impacted by either one vote loss or a tie vote. Every time we don't have integrity in the election process, and I've pushed hard for something called voter ID, voter ID, and will continue to do that to assure that we don't have any case of voter fraud in New Mexico.
Thank you. Okay. New Mexico reportedly has many inactive, deceased, or otherwise invalid registrations on the active voter list. If you agree, do you have a plan to address it? And if you disagree, do you believe the statewide voter rolls are accurate as listed?
One of the things I did when I came into office was I said that I was going to do everything that I could do to assure that we had, in as much as possible, an accurate voter file. We had an MOU that had been in place since 2006 that no previous Secretary of State had chosen to engage in. Under my administration, we came in under that MOU. We engaged with the Motor Vehicle Division in New Mexico to do the first cross-check ever in New Mexico of our voter file with the file that NBD had. We took that, did a tremendous amount of work, gave a report that November to the legislature of a number of irregularities we did find doing that cross-check. The deceased voters was a very big concern. We engaged at that time, my Director of Elections put in place a process whereby we have been working closely with the 33 county clerks to assure that they have the documentation that they need to remove deceased voters from the rolls. And with that process that we have put in place, it's never happened before in the Secretary of State's office, we have removed over 1,000 deceased voters from the rolls. And when I say we have provided the documentation to the individual county clerks in the 33 counties to do that. We continue to work in many, many ways to assure that we have accuracy in our voter file, and we will use every resource and every ability that is available to us to continue to work on the accuracy of our voter file.
Thank you. Do you support or oppose same-day voter registration in New Mexico? Please explain.
Thank you for that question. Same-day registration, if we have, anytime we have, again, I said earlier, if we have someone, and remember that I investigated voter fraud, investigated it and turned it over in Sunland Park. With same-day registration, and you all know that many of you know I came from Otero County, Border County. With same-day registration, someone from Texas can drive over into Otero County, register to vote, vote that day, go back to Texas and vote again. We have to ensure again that we have integrity in the process. Today, I do not believe and I do not support same-day registration because that, again, is not, we have to first work on ways to ensure that we have integrity in the process. In New Mexico right now, we don't even require a voter ID, anyone to show an ID when you show up to vote. We don't require ID when you register to vote. There are so many issues in New Mexico that we still need to deal with, that we still need to implement in order to assure everyone that they can have confidence that their vote will count. But same-day registration is not one of those processes, and there are too many other issues that come along with same-day registration. We must continue to advance in the process of assuring integrity in the process and assuring that when you go to vote, that we know that it is you that is coming to vote. Without voter ID, we don't have that. Same-day registration would not help that at all. It would just not happen, and I oppose it.
Thank you. I think you kind of already addressed this, but I'll ask it anyway. Do you support or oppose legislation requiring voter identification? Please explain.
Yes, yes, yes. I have been a strong proponent of voter ID since I became a senator in 1992. My first term in the Senate in 1993, I proposed legislation to require photo ID. Again, voter ID is I think, a very important part of being able to assure integrity in the system. And let me tell you why. We'll all remember, even aside from Sunland Park, many of us remember we had a 40-year-old gentleman show up with the same name as his son in Albuquerque in 2012, wanting to vote in the place of his 18-year-old son. He was allowed to do that. And the only reason that a flag even went up was because the poll workers recognized that he didn't look like he was 18 years old. But let me just share a personal story with you too. It almost happened to me. In Otero County, there are probably 4 Dianna Durans. I went to go to the polling place in Alamogordo. Everybody there knows everybody, like they do in all small towns. And the poll worker came up, gave me a hug, and said, "Oh, you're here to vote." So we started visiting. She pulled up my name on the computer, and lo and behold, I'm getting ready to sign the signature pad that we're all familiar with. And if I had not looked down carefully and seen that my address was not the same, I would have been issued an incorrect ballot. It is that simple. So whether it's a criminal act that someone such as Sunland Park is committing intentionally, or whether it is just an error on the part of the poll worker, if we had a photo voter ID requirement, those things wouldn't be happening, and we can assure you that only the person who shows up to the polls showing their voter ID is the person that's being allowed to vote.
Thank you. Now you have 2 minutes. Please tell the hiring committee why you believe you are the best candidate to represent the people of New Mexico as Secretary of State.
Okay, 2 minutes is going really fast, but I will try to make it quick. First and foremost, in my career, I have been committed to election integrity at all levels. Whether it was as Otero County Clerk for 2 terms when I served there, working elections 25 years in New Mexico, in Otero, or serving in the state Senate for 18 years where I worked on election issues, and now serving as your Secretary of State. I have been committed to doing the very best job to assure you that you have a Secretary of State who is concerned, number one, as Chief Elections Officer, for that your vote counts. Number two, to bringing that office back to where you could be proud of it and stop all of the waste that had been going on, stop all of the incompetencies that went on prior to my administration when we had all the bad news for years and years and years. And I am proud to say to you today that we have taken that office in 4 years to somewhere just unbelievable. The amazing job that has been done over the past 4 years to bring professionalism, expertise to that office, to put a leadership team that is truly working for you, to put in place and stop violations of federal and state law. For the first time in many years under my administration, the New Mexico Secretary of State's office is compliant with federal and state law. And legislators who have said they were embarrassed to know that when prior to my coming in, we were the only state in the nation that was not compliant under federal law, the National Voter Registration Act. We are now compliant for the first time. We continue to improve. We have taken on the Corporations Division, took a backlog in the Corporations Division that was an average of 4 months, took it to 3 days, and we continue to improve on the processes in that office. We continue to work very hard so that you can now be proud of your Secretary of State's office. I really believe that we have done that, and so I believe that I